Hi, I'm Mark Gaylor and I'm a Sony Imaging Ambassador. But what you see sitting beside me are not Sony cameras, they're rangefinder cameras dating back to the 1950s. Now there's been an interest in this particular aesthetic of this rangefinder style. Now one of the issues with these rangefinder style cameras is they're fixed lens cameras. Now what I wanted to do in this video is show how we can get that aesthetic, use classic style lenses but on Sony interchangeable lens cameras instead. So I'll just put these to one side and show you what I am working on at the moment. One is this Alpha 6000. It's in a silver finish, as you can see here. Now I've adapted a Voigtlander Nocton 40mm lens via a $10 adapter. It's going to be manual focus, but it's got a nice form factor with that particular aesthetic that people are now interested in. Now the camera over here, however, is my Alpha 7C II. Now again, it's the silver version of this Alpha 7C II, and what I've done is I've adapted a Voigtlander Nocton 35mm lens, which is a 1.4 aperture, on this Techart AF adapter. So we get that aesthetic, we get the use of a prime lens, but now I can use this in autofocus mode. So let's take a look at this in greater detail. I've titled this video Going Retro, but it's also going to be of great interest to photographers looking to adapt classic or vintage glass to their Sony Alpha bodies. Now this retro aesthetic dates back to the rangefinder cameras from the 1950s, the sort of cameras my grandfather and father would use. Now this has got a renewed interest because of Fujifilm's X100 Mark VI, and the pre-orders for this camera was through the roof. And of course we can actually get a more flexible camera if we choose to get a retro aesthetic using an interchangeable lens camera. Now you can see on the left there I've got an Alpha 6000 camera alongside one of my classic rangefinder cameras there. Now, interestingly, the Fujifilm X100 VI, which is an APS-C camera, is both wider and taller than Sony Alpha 7C II, Alpha 7CR cameras. And that's great for the Sony because it is a full frame sensor we're looking at there. The only dimension where the Fujifilm actually wins out is its slimline form factor because of that fixed APS-C lens on that Fujifilm. We can, however, sort of match that aesthetic by looking at maybe a pancake lens, such as the Brightinstar 28mm f2.8. Now it's only a few millimeters thickness, but I've actually mounted it onto a Techart AF adapter. So I've got the flexibility of that pancake lens, but also with autofocus capability. As I said, the advantage of what we're looking at now is using an interchangeable lens and providing it with that vintage aesthetic, but also giving the flexibility of being able to change lenses and focal lengths. Here, for instance, I've switched out that Brightinstar lens for a Sony APS-C pancake lens. These are available in black or silver, so here I'm showcasing the silver version, which is a 16mm f2.8. This would force a full-frame user to shoot in APS-C mode, but for many people there's enough resolution to consider that as an option. Now there have been a couple of silver versions of their APS-C cameras. I own the silver version of that Alpha 6000, but we also have a silver version of the 6400 camera. Now these may or may not be available in the country where you are, but you might be able to find one secondhand on eBay if you can't find a new version of one of these cameras. Now I actually provide setup advice by creating ebooks for a whole range of cameras, including that A6000 and 6400, and you'll be able to find those on my patreon.com/Mark Gaylor support channel there. Let's take a look at the silver E-Mount lenses. These are native E-Mount. These don't need to be adapted because they have that E-Mount. We have that TT Artisan 50mm f2, which is a full frame manual focus lens. And then I managed to find 3 silver APS-C lenses there, the 7 Artisans 25mm f1.8, the Niwa 35mm f1.1, and the Laowa 10mm f4. Now these are all bargain basement cheap lenses. They are all APS-C and they are all manual focus lenses. So what I'm going to be looking at is adapting lenses. We're using manual focus lenses, but we give them either close focusing capability or AF autofocus capability. The lenses I will be looking at primarily in this video are Voigtlander lenses. Now, what we see on the left is a native E-Mount version of their Nocton Classic 35mm f1.4. Now, it is a manual focus lens, and you can see on the back of this lens it does have the electrical contacts to communicate its focal length with the camera, plus also the aperture that you've selected. What we're seeing on the right side, however, is the M version, the Leica-M version of this Nocton 35mm f1.4 classic lens. Now, the advantage of choosing the M mount version, the Leica mount version, is that we can put it on a Techart AF adapter, which is the LM-EA9 adapter, and this gives autofocus capability to this Nocton manual focus lens. Now, I do need to point out that Leica-M lenses lack contacts that would normally be used to transfer EXIF data from the lens to the camera. Now, this EXIF data does enable focus assist magnification to kick in when we turn the focus ring, and automatic image stabilization because the camera knows the focal length of the lens. Now, when we use the Techart adapter, we can actually program the Techart to actually communicate the focal length of the lens we're using to the camera for good steady shot performance. If we're going to choose to adapt vintage or classic glass, we are going to have to choose a lens adapter. Now, on the left, we've got a manual focus adapter. It is that Leica M mount to NEX, which of course is now the Alpha E mount. In the center, we've got an LM to E close focus adapter from 7 Artisans. This is like having a built-in extension tube into the converter, so we can get very close focusing distance with our classic lenses. We're still able to photograph to infinity, but we can turn that ring on the adapter in order to get that close focus capability. And over on the right, we've got the most expensive of the adapters, which is the Techart Pro AF adapter. It's their second version. It's the LM to EA9. So again, it's a Leica M mount to Sony E-Mount adapter. Now, there are some lenses that are not compatible with that Techart adapter. One of those is the Leica lens. Now, the reason this Leica lens is not suitable for use with that Techart adapter is because of that little infinity button there that sort of locks the focus ring on the lens to the infinity distance, but that sort of gets in the way of the actual Techart adapter. So you would be restricted to using another adapter, such as a 7 Artisans adapter, if choosing one of the Leica lenses with that little infinity button there. In this video, I'll be primarily looking at using Voigtlander lenses. Now, Voigtlander is one of the oldest lens manufacturers in the world. The lenses were originally designed and made in Germany, but the company is now owned by Cassina and the lenses are made in Japan, but the quality is still exceptionally high on these lenses. Now, as I said, I'll be using the Techart Pro Leica M mount to Sony E-Mount AF adapter, which is their version 2. Now, we'll be looking at Voigtlander manual focus full frame primes, and there'll be more than 35 lenses to choose from in Voigtlander's range, right from 10mm right out to 110mm. Here I'm showcasing the 15mm f4.5, the Nocton 35mm f1.4, the Nocton 50mm f1, and the 75mm 1.5. Now, if I'm going to be primarily focusing on one lens, it's going to be the 35mm focal length, because that's a nice focal length to act as a street walkabout lens. Now, there's 5 Voigtlander 35mm M mount lenses to choose from. Now, I'm going to be testing the Nocton 35mm f1.4. It's their second version. It retails for US $599. There is a smaller Scopar 35mm f2.5, which is $150 cheaper than that Nocton 1.4. On the right, we've got two silver lenses, the Nocton 35mm f1.5 and the Ultron 35mm f2. We've also perhaps got the premium 35mm lens in their range, which is the Apo-Lanther 35mm f2 lens, which comes in just a shade under $1,000 US. Now, I'm going to be looking at the Nocton Classic 35mm 1.4 version 2, which retails for just $1 lower than $600 US. Now, you might be attracted to looking at that Nocton Classic 40mm f1.4, given that it is a couple of $100 cheaper, but it's an older design than the 35mm f1.4 version 2. Now, Voigtlander claim that their version 2 of this lens features a refined optical design that is better suited for use with digital cameras, especially in conjunction with focusing using live view. So I've gone for that middle of the range cost, a Nocton Classic 35mm in this view, and I will be adapting it via that Techart adapter. So if we're going to factor in that price point of that Techart adapter, we're going to come in at just a shade under $1,000 US, and that whole weight of that unit, including the adapter, is 317 grams or 11.2 ounces. Now I have to point out that the Sony FE 35mm f1.8 native E-Mount lens is going to be $350 cheaper than adapting this classic glass, and it is also going to be lighter, although the form factor is larger. Now, if you were going to choose that Apo-Lanther 35mm f2, which is the premium 35mm lens, and use that Techart adapter, you're going to be getting on now for $1,348 US. Now, that is going to be more expensive than using a Sony FE 35mm f1.4 G Master lens. So you are going to have to be really wanting to adapt this classic or vintage glass to your camera, given that we've got two already great choices of 35mm Sony lenses to choose from. Now, the recommended settings when using these manual focus M-mount lenses is I will choose to put the main focus into either manual focus or AFS with focus magnifier, and I'll program the AF on button to tracking on plus AF on, and I'm going to be using a back button autofocus workflow. I've noticed I've got the best AF performance by using these particular settings. Now, some people might be tempted to use the DMF focus mode, but I have noticed that there's issues on the camera and Techart adapter that I was using. So to give you an outline of this is DMF, and as the camera snaps focus, it then pulls back. It should lock on to the subject and then allow me to refine the focus using focus assist, but in this instance the DMF is snapping back out of focus, so I wasn't able to use it. There may be a Techart firmware upgrade that stops this from doing this, but on the Techart adapter that I was using, there was issues. Now, because we have AF in the adapter, which basically moves the lens in and out in order to autofocus, we also have a focus ring on the Voigtlander lenses. So if you're trying to photograph out to infinity, it is important to put the focus ring on the lens to that infinity symbol, because the Techart adapter won't be able to push the lens to infinity focus if the focus ring on the lens isn't also dialed into infinity. Now, you will get better close-up performance if you then turn that focus ring maybe to a meter distance or less, and then let the focus adapter fine-tune that focus for you. I'm also going to be using focus magnifier and peaking display. There are going to be instances where the Techart adapter might struggle, so I want to be able to fine-tune the accuracy of that focus using both focus magnifier and peaking display. Now, if you're using native E-mount lenses and you turn the focus ring, it can go into auto magnifier in manual focus, but because we're using these adapted lenses to E-mount system, we're not going to be able to use that auto magnifier. So you may want to assign a focus magnifier feature to one of your custom keys. Here I'm assigning it to the movie button on the top of the camera there. Now I will also enable peaking display and I'll set the peaking level to low and the peaking color to red, which is my own personal preferences. Now there is a way of communicating the focal length of the lens to the camera using this Techart adapter. Now it seems a little bit strange, and we normally set the aperture on the camera to f2 to get accurate exposure when using this Techart adapter. But if you dial into one of these particular apertures on the camera, take one shot, it assigns a focal length to the Techart adapter, and that is then communicated to the body so we get good steady shot performance. So for instance, if I'm using the 35mm Nocton lens, I will switch to f5.6 on the camera body, take one shot, and that programs the Techart adapter to communicate a 35mm focal length to the camera body. Now, if that is all a little bit too complicated, we could, of course, just go to our steady shot settings, move from auto to manual adjustment, and dial in the focal length of the lens that we're using. Here I'm dialing in the 15mm for the Voigtlander 15mm f4.5 lens. Now it is possible to change the focal length of the Fujifilm X100 and also previous versions using Fujifilm's 28mm and 50mm converters. Now the advantage, however, of using an interchangeable lens camera is we're not restricted to just 3 focal lengths. There are over 39 Voigtlander lenses from 10mm to 110mm, and although they are manual focus lenses, we can use them in autofocus mode using that Techart LM to EA9 lens adapter. Now if we are to use those converters for the Fujifilm, that does put the Fujifilm larger in all 3 dimensions now, width, height and also depth, because we do have a range of very compact lenses for our Alpha 7C cameras. Well, not just the Alpha 7C, all E-Mount cameras. And my favorite Sony native E-Mount lenses are those compact lenses from the 24, the 35 Zeiss, the 40mm and 50mm 2.5G lenses. And I actually like the aesthetic and form factor of these compact Sony primes on the Sony bodies. If you're interested in those particular lenses, I do have a Weight Watchers video tutorial which takes a look at those compact form factor lenses for the Sony bodies. We will, however, now be primarily looking at the Voigtlander lenses used on that Techart Pro adapter. And as you can see, we've got a range of lenses. We've got a very slimline 27mm f2 there, the 35mm 1.4 Nocton, which I'll be primarily using in this video. And we've also got super wide aperture lenses such as that 50mm f1 Nocton lens there. Now, we'll be looking at creating this aesthetic. Now, I've also added a base plate here. This is one from Niwa, but we've also got versions from Small Rig as well. And I'm adapting these lenses onto a silver Alpha 7C2 body there. And I've also attached the LH-6 lens hood, which is a classic rangefinder style lens hood to the camera there, just to complete that visual aesthetic. I'm also using this with a parachuter wrist strap from a Wotan Craft there. And again, that really gives this camera a nice visual aesthetic and beautiful form factor when doing street photography. So let's take a look at a retro camera kit. So again, we've got all of those accessories that I've been looking at, the lens hood, the Techart adapter, the parachuter wrist strap, and I'll be carrying it in a very small camera bag such as Wotan Craft's 3.5L Mini Rider. This is a premium grade leather bag from Wotan Craft here. Comes in both the brown and also black leather versions there. Now this is a nice carrying case for an Alpha 7C f2 with adapted glass. Now you'll also see that I've also put in a pouch from Wotancraft, which also allows me to carry a couple of spare compact lenses, or a compact lens and a couple of Z series batteries. And this is basically just the use of the pouch is to stop things rattling around inside of that Mini Rider bag there. So just to list those items: the Mini Rider leather bag, the parachuter wrist strap, the Voigtlander lens, and the Wotancraft portable camera pouch. This is the medium rather than the small size there. I'll put links to these in the info section below the video. Now, if you're looking to put the Voigtlander lens assembly complete with adapter, there are a couple of cases sitting on my shelf that I've noticed also will carry this. This was the LA-EA5 Sony lens adapter. The knocked-on with adapter will fit into this one, or will go into the 2x teleconverter case, but in this instance without the Techart adapter attached. So, and as I said, that pouch can take a couple of spare compact lenses, and one of the compact lenses that I often find myself carrying is a Sigma 90mm f2.8 DGDN, which also fits in that Wotancraft pouch there. So that Mini Rider premium sling is excellent quality. It has to be seen to be believed, actually, the quality that Wotancraft have extracted by creating and manufacturing this premium leather bag, as you can see. I've also reviewed these bags on my YouTube channel. This is the Pilot 3.5L, and it's the leather edition. It comes in a canvas, but this is the black leather version here. And you'll see that I'm carrying an Alpha 7C2 with adapted lens. I've also got an Alpha 6700 as a second camera, also with an adapted Voigtlander lens, and both of those comfortably fit in this Pilot 3.5L leather edition bag there. And as you can see, this is really completes the visual aesthetic that I'm looking for this retro styling of my Alpha 7C body. So I suppose what a lot of people will be asking now is, okay, so we might be spending a little bit more than maybe using a 35mm f1. Sony lens, or even a GM lens. So what's the quality like of these Voigtlander lenses? Now, first off, let's take a look at one Voigtlander lens that I currently own, which is their 15mm f4.5. And I have to say the corner performance of this particular landscape lens is really very, very good. And I'll have an album of ultra high definition images on my Flickr Pro site if you want to check out the quality that is capable of this 15mm f4.5 lens, as you can see from these particular shots. In the rest of this video tutorial, I'll be focusing my attention on their f1.4 35mm knocked-on version 2 lens. Now, as I said, that we do have choices of Sony native E-Mount lenses. Now, of course, the AF performance of this adapted glass is going to be nowhere near as good as the 35mm 1.8 or the 35mm 1.4 G Master lens, and that's not really the purpose of this exercise, is to look for quality better than these Sony lenses. We're looking at basically a visual aesthetic of the actual lens, plus also the character of the images that these type of lenses produce. So if I was going to do some street photography at the maximum f1.4 aperture and my subjects are moving very quickly, I would be using the Sony glass, not the adapted glass. Things are going to have to be moving a lot more slowly in order to get reliable autofocus using that Techart AF adapter. So if I'm working with people that are stopped in the street, that I'm doing some portraits, then I'd be happy to use the Voigtlander glass in these particular instances. So this was actually captured with the Voigtlander. Now, one would have to say the corner performance of the 35mm 1.4 knocked-on, especially at the wider apertures, is not going to be fabulous. We are going to have quite soft corners when used wide open. Even at f2, f2.8, the corners are going to be a little bit soft compared to the Sony glass. But in most instances, when we're doing this sort of low light ambient street photography, the subject's in the center and we're going to get really good sharpness. Now I've actually stopped this Nocton 35mm 1.4 down to 2.8 to show you that we can get really good central sharpness at this particular aperture with this lens. Now I think this was at a f2.8 again, and again we're getting good central sharpness on these particular character portraits that I'm capturing with this Voigtlander glass. Now the bokeh is going to be quite a different character to the bokeh produced by the Sony lenses. Some would prefer the Voigtlander bokeh. Now let's take a look at the corner performance. Now this is the 35mm with the aperture wide open at f1.4. Now if I zoom into the corners, you'll see that we don't have great contrast. We've got a little bit of light bleed. It's almost like we're photographing through a slightly misty window here. So we're not getting ultra best performance at that 1.4, especially in the corners. We are going to get much better performance if we just stop down to f2. Corner performance already takes a marked leap forward there. And at f2.8, I think most people are going to be happy with the corner performance when we stop down to f2.8. So I would prefer with the Voigtlander lens to shoot starting at f2.8 and only open up to f2 or f1.4 in low light environments or where I need maximum figure ground separation, and I don't mind the character of maybe using a Voigtlander lens at maximum aperture. If that corner performance disturbs you, remember there are other more premium quality 35mm Voigtlander lenses with better corner sharpness than this Nocton 35mm f1.4. But again, I'm just showcasing that we've got good central performance even at the wider apertures, as you can see from these particular shots that I've captured. I'll put a link in the info section below this movie so you can access ultra high definition photographs captured with the Alpha 7C2, the Techart AF adapter and the Voigtlander 35mm Nocton lens. Here's the camera kit that I'll be using if I'm working with this vintage aesthetic, and you'll probably want to check out that Techart adapter if you are going to want to use the flexibility of using manual focus lenses but have the autofocus capability. If you've liked this video tutorial, just give me the thumbs up and subscribe. If you're wanting more support after this video has ended, just go to patreon.com/Mark Gaylor, where you will find a whole range of 600, 700 page ebooks for your specific camera to help you get the best possible setup. I also supply camera setup files to set up your files as outlined in these ebooks. On my support channel, I've also got over 30 hours of seminars and lectures that you can watch at your own leisure. So if you've enjoyed this movie, just give me the thumbs up, please subscribe, and I'll catch up with you online next time.